طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه بعد. It is very pleasing to be with my brothers and sisters in this part of the world down under, where it is a long way from home. But the moment you come and you pray and you see these beautiful faces, you know that you're not far away from home, that you are with your brothers and sisters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and gather us in Jannat al-Na'im and grant us His love and His acceptance and His rida. Allahumma ameen. Tonight, I would like to speak to you about a great scholar, one of the greatest scholars that we have in our history as Muslims, which is Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. And Imam Ahmad in particular, when you talk about his life and the amount of documentation of his life, it is unmatched by any other Imam. This is not because just, hey, maybe you're Hanbali, you like Imam Ahmad more than others. No, that's actually a fact. The amount of details and documentation of an Imam Ahmad's life, it became something very noticeable. And the people reported his life and what he does and all of the things that he used to do in his life and after his death in a way that they say, قال كأنه نبي أعوذ بالله. يعني the way they documented, as it documented the life of a prophet. And they don't mean that he is a prophet or Nabi, أعوذ بالله. No, but they meant that the way the Prophet ﷺ documented his movement, the way he eats, the way he walks, every single details documented about the Prophet ﷺ, that's how also every single details about Imam Ahmad was documented, and you get to know that this became a problem later on. And I would like to make my talk tonight more than just focusing on one incident in his life, which is the trial, but more about Imam Ahmad rahimahullah's life, and definitely we'll talk about that crisis. And when we talk about the biography of the scholars, it is like what Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah once said. قال, I rather to study about the life of the scholars, and I enjoy it more than studying their fiqh opinions. That's what Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said. Because there is so much to learn from these scholars. هذا الإمام أحمد specifically كان يحضر مجلسه, as الإمام الذهبي رحمه الله said, will be attended, his class will be attended by around 5,000 people. 4,500 of them, they're not there because they learned the hadith and fiqh, no. Only about 500 there for the knowledge. But the rest of the people, there to learn from hadith wa samtih, to learn from his manners, the way he carry himself, the way he deal, his akhlaq, his way of dealing, the wisdom that he share with his students. So I can say that so much of this, alhamdulillah, was documented, and I will focus on it today. Because I'm not here just to talk about, history, that something happened in the past. But what I'm here to speak about, the life of those scholars, as Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said, it is because their life, there is so much to learn from it. It's the same thing, the stories of the prophets and messenger. في قصصهم عبرة. In their stories, there is a lessons for us, something to learn from. And that's how we should look at the biography of the scholars, rahimahumullah ta'ala. He's Ahmad, known as Ahmad ibn Hanbal, but his father actually is named Muhammad. His grandfather is Hanbal. He's Dhuhali and known as Abu Abdullah. He was born, rahimahullah ta'ala, in Baghdad. He was born in Baghdad. And so he's a Baghdadi by birth. And he was born 164 Hijri, which is equal to 780 780. And he died, rahimahullah, 241 or 855. 855. He died in July 31st, 855. So that means he died in the age of 77. So he lived 77 years, rahimahullah ta'ala. He died also in Baghdad, and he was buried in Baghdad, rahimahullah. Let's get to know who he is, how he grew up, what kind of person he was. And Imam Ahmad, there's great scholars, and the first thing that you notice, he was actually raised by a single mother. He was raised by a single mom. His father died while Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, was inside his mother womb. And his father died in a very early age. His father was about 30 years old when he died. And his mom took care of him. So he's an orphaned boy. And his mom took good care of him, rahimahullah. He was born in Baghdad. They moved to Maru. Then she brought him back to Baghdad. Or somebody said that he was in Maru, then later on came to Baghdad. And he said, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, about his mother. He said, my mother, she made 2 holes on my ear. And she used to put in my ear 2 earrings made of pearls, pure pearls, in my ear. And he said, when I became a little bit older, like, grew up about 10 years or something like that, she took them off and she gave it to me. Khalas, I became a more responsible person. And he said, I kept them and I sold them later on, and I used the money to seek knowledge with them. So some of the money that I managed was actually these pearls that she gave to me. And that's part of the culture at that time, that kids, even boys, will have, an earring, something that they have it in their culture. But what's interesting about his mother, he said, I like to go to the masjid before Fajr. And my mother used to keep me, and she said, until the adhan. Because when the adhan called, there's many people on the street, so I feel safe about you. You talk about a boy who's like 9, 8 years old. Okay? She said, I don't feel safe. You need to wait until the adhan calls so you can go. And he said, so many times, I will wake up or she wake me up. And I found my mother already awake, and she have put the water on the fire to make it warm, so I can make wudu with the warm water before Fajr. Then many times she will walk me to the masjid if I have to go before Fajr. So that's the type of support that he grew up receiving from his family. And that's something so important for us to learn, that your children need your support, And if you pay attention to your children, you invest in your children's education, especially Islamic education, it pays back. They need to see that, that you care, that you appreciate, what your children are doing. Anyway, and he used to go, rahimahullah ta'ala, to study under a scholar, his name Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. He goes to something called Kuttab, where they teach basic math and Arabic, reading and writing. Then after that, at the age of 14, he listed his name in a diwan. A diwan is the reserve. So he's at 14 years old, he said, I'm in the reserve. When he became an adult, he can be pulled into what? To the army. And also could be a diwan. Some people interpret a diwan as something that's at higher level of education or role. Usually it refers to something handled by the government, but usually a diwan is something where people enlisted for the army. Anyway, rahimahullah, his true journey to knowledge, it started at the age of 15 years old. So when he By 15, he became very dedicated to learn al-hadith. And he basically started exposing to different type of source of knowledge. He was asked once about him as a teenager seeking knowledge and want to learn the knowledge, especially the science of hadith. قالت لم تكن لي فيه في أول الأمر نية. He said, in the beginning, I didn't have the best of intention. Because at that time of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, you have two big schools in the Muslim world. If you live in Iraq, you have very heavily influenced by Abu Hanifa's school of thought in al-Kufa, which is known as al-Iraqiyin. It's not only Abu Hanifa. At that time, Abu Hanifa rahimahullah is an individual, not a madhab yet. But Abu Hanifa and so many of the Kufi scholars in that area. But you have another heavy also weight school represented by Imam Malik rahimahullah and Imam Shafi rahimahullah, which is known as Madrasatu Fiqh Ahl al-Hadith, which is the fiqh that's based on mainly on al-Hadith versus al-Ra'i in al-Iraq. So as he's growing up as a teenager, he started reading the books of Masail al-Imam Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, the famous students of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Then he started seeking the hadith. So some of the purpose behind him collecting the hadith was actually to refute some of the other, opinions that exist in the Abu Hanifa schools. That's why his intention, he said, wasn't the best of intention. It was something that I learned something so I can argue with, I can refute, I can debate. It's kind of, as a young man, he said, my intention wasn't right, in the right place. And he regretted that, rahimahullah ta'ala. Because later on, Imam Ahmad was asked, what's the right intention in seeking knowledge? It's a wrong intention to learn because you want to debate, or you want to correct, or you want to do this to others, to lead others. That should not be the intention of learning the knowledge. قال الإخلاص في العلم, the sincerity in seeking knowledge, and تنوي به رفع الجهل عن نفسك. The true sincerity in knowledge is to seek knowledge because you want to remove your own ignorance. You want to benefit yourself. You want to save yourself. Then later on, all these other things comes. But that should be your main focus, rahimahullah ta'ala. And anyway, he definitely helped. And he said, I looked at the books of Ahlul Ra'i, and I learned from it, and from it Masail. And he was exposed to it in the beginning. But he has an interest and a great deal of interest in collecting the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the athar. To the extent that some of the scholars said, I saw Imam Ahmad rahimahullah collected so much narrations and narrated to people so many narrations and not a single hair in his face. قال قال وما بقل بعد, يعني his hair just to start to grow in his face. You know how when you have your teenager boy says, Baba, my beard looks so messed up, just a little patch here and patch here, some here, that hair here, and not like, doesn't look right. That's just a little baby hair, and that's how his face looked like. Very young age. And with this, rahimahullah, he was told, he already a scholar in hadith. Like he knows so much in the hadith. There is a scholar at that time, his name is Hushaym ibn Bashir. Hushaym Bashir هذا I don't know what to tell you. Hushaym Bashir هذا one of the greatest scholars of hadith. Hushaym Bashir هذا, he narrated more than 20,000 narrations himself. His ahadith in every books of Kutub al-Hadith. Imam Ahmad, when he was still teenager, memorized 3,000 hadith from Hushaym mubasharatan, straight. And he observed his knowledge that when Hushaym died, Imam Ahmad was the candidate to replace his position in his teaching, and Imam Ahmad still was not even 20 years old yet. That's just an incredible. That's an incredible. He decided to travel at the age of 20, and he walked all the way to Al-Kufa from Baghdad, and he met a scholar, his name Abu Muawiyah al-Dharir. He was young, so it's not safe for a young man to travel. So he said, my mother and the people arranged for me to travel with a man, Arabi, a Bedouin, to take care of him and to guide him because he doesn't know how to find his way. He said that Bedouin man took me, and I told my mom I'm only going to Al-Kufa. Al-Kufa is like what? It's, let's say, going from here to the what? To the Golden Coast, something like 2 hours كده يعني. But at that time it's maybe a day of traveling. So he took him there. He said, this Arabi, this Bedouin, he took me and he said to me, you know what, this empty abandoned house, you can stay here. I'm going for Hajj. He said, Hajj? How about me going back? I'm going to be going back. And he just left him in Kufa. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, anyway, he started learning from the scholars that exist in Al-Kufa. And he said, فَاسْتَوْحَشْتُ, I was alone in that abandoned house for a while, and I felt like lonely and scared. He said, I only had like carrying a bag that it has my books. And he said, there was a brick. I used it as my pillow for so many nights that I used to use it as a pillow. And he said, anyway, so he started learning and stuff like that. Then he decided to go back, take permission from his mom to go for Hajj because he never took a permission. So he traveled all the way back to ask permission for his mother to go for Hajj. Another lesson, so many times when we start learning and we became, college students or, have my degree and I feel like I don't need my permission from my parents anymore. I'm an independent, blah, blah, blah. But that's not right. Anyway, so he said I went to my mother and I took permission from her and she gave me a permission to go for Hajj. And you can imagine that time Hajj is very difficult because you travel a great deal of distance. It's not safe. Guys, how we have culture until today. I don't know if you guys have this. I'm sure you do. When people go to Hajj, write your will. That's right. Please forgive me, Madresh. That's right. Isn't that people do that? You know where these came from? Came from all days, because usually there is a very, very, very good chance you never come back when you go to Hajj. But now you just take airlines and come back. It's not as, the risk is not as high as it used to. That's why this whole culture of please forgive me, all the debt, madri ish, just because they're afraid they will never come back. It's not necessarily with the Hajj itself. Anyway, so his mother let him go, and that's a lesson for us. So every time as we read his life, I want to point out some lessons for us to learn, okay? And that's a lesson that you should trust your children, and you should give them a chance to have their own experience in life. He's now 20 years old. Some parents don't know how to do that. Some parents don't give that, room and space for their children to have their own experience. Some parents, they want them to live with them even, and to be controlled. And that's, I know we all would love to have our kids with us, but also it's so important for you not to be selfish and to kind of step back and to watch them having their own experience. Your role is to advise, not to control. Anyway, so his mother let him go. And guess what? Rahimahullah ta'ala. He made 5 Hajj in his lifetime. He went to Mecca for Hajj 5 times. That's a very good, at that time. 3 of them walking. Did not have a camel, did not have a mule, did not have anything to ride. Completely walking with like what we call today economy Hajj, the cheapest Hajj, So look at the cheapest group, and that would be very high class compared to what he did. Rahimahullah ta'ala. يقول وكيع, I did not see any man entered Al-Kufa like this man. You understand the value of this statement if you know Al-Kufa is the capital of knowledge. Like the greatest scholars of his time, lived in Al-Kufa. And I passed by Al-Kufa. Al-Kufa is a city of knowledge. Why? Because you have more than 400 companions moved to Al-Kufa, lived in Al-Kufa, died in Al-Kufa. 400 companions. That means these people have left behind them what? Huge amount of knowledge. Okay? So Al-Kufa is a place known for ilm. Anyway, rahimahullah ta'ala, he stayed in Mecca when he was about 33 years old. And he became very famous, rahimahullah, to the extent at the age of 34, he was seen in Masjid al-Khayf in Mina, sitting on a chair, teaching and narrating the hadith. 34. That's also an incredible achievement in such a young age. And that's a lesson for us to learn as well. Sometimes we don't give that chance for young people. We always assume because you're young, it means you're foolish, you have no experience. I have a bad news to tell you. Experience is not only gained by how many years you lived. Experience are gained and wisdom are gained by age is one part of it. Otherwise, all older will be wise, but that's not the case. Age absolutely can be a reason for you to be wise, give you experience. But if you did not expose to many different things in life and you lived a very simple life, doesn't mean necessarily you will have that experience. But what I'm saying is don't judge people just by their age, because some of them can be very, very wise, very mature in a very early age, rahimahullah. Anyway, something interesting about him going to Hajj. One of the things that he used to do for Hajj, he used to go to meet the scholars. So he decided one year that after Hajj, he will go to Yemen to study under a great scholar in Yemen. His name Abdul Razzaq al-San'ani. Guess what? Him and his best friend Yahya ibn Ma'in making tawaf, and here you see Abdul Razzaq making tawaf. So they said, excellent. Ibn Ma'in said, excellent. He saved us the trip. Let's go take the hadith from him. Imam Ahmad said no. Why? He said, my intention to go all the way to Yemen is not about the hadith, it's about the experience. It's about the ajr. And Imam Ahmad refused to study with him until he goes all the way in Yemen and he studied with him. And he took a great risk because he got broke. By the time he lost his money and he became out of money completely, that Imam Ahmad rahimahullah had to hire himself as Jammal, yani somebody to clean the horses and to clean, the filth of the horses and stuff like that, and the camels, in a very low job, which is a lesson too for us. Never shame to work halal job. There's no such thing. I have a degree and I have madriyah. No, if that's the only job you can get, do it to support yourself. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he was about 35 years old. And he studied in Yemen. SubhanAllah, it was not about Abdul Razzaq because he met so many scholars in Yemen. And Yemen known to be of scholars who live long life. So some of the mashayikh that he met there, they actually died at the age of 140. So that the older the person is, that means he met an earlier scholars. So it connect him closer to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yani one of his shuyukh was Abdurrahman one of the shuyukh. He died at the age of 116 also. Anyway, he stayed about 10 months and he was out of money. I'll show you how hard it was for him. One night, he was basically leading the salah or attending in the salah, and he couldn't focus. He kept missing verses. So his Shaykh Abdul Razzaq asked, they said that Imam Ahmad for 2 days didn't eat anything. That's why he couldn't even read properly. Rahimahullah ta'ala. One of the things that Imam Abdul Razzaq told him, yeah, Ahmed, I grow this, have like a farm and he grow things, vegetables and stuff like that, crops. So he in it, and he said, I sell it and I make money. So it's not the time for me to collect the money, but I asked one of my wives, and she had few dinanir, like 8, 10 dinars, take it, it will help you. Ahmed said no. Why? Because he doesn't know where Imam, first he doesn't take anything from anyone, as somebody paid him. Two, he said, I don't know where's the source of this money. He's very particular about only having a halal income, rahimahullah ta'ala. Anyway, so he stayed, rahimahullah, in Yemen for a while. When he first came to Abdul Razzaq, he was about to knock on the door, and somebody told him, you don't do that to the Shaykh Abdul Razzaq. You wait until he comes out of respect. Then he said he waited it, and when he came out, I told him, I have some ahadith, I want to narrate it for you to tell me if it's correct or not. Did you narrate this ahadith? He said, who are you? قال فزبرني. He was kind of mean to me. He said, what do you think yourself? Like coming at my door like that. Who are you? Then he said, Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Can you imagine? That's a scholar in Yemen. There is no internet. It's not like a YouTube channel, your followers or anything like that. Okay? So Abdul Razzaq Sani قال, Ahmad ibn Hanbal from Baghdad? He said, yes. He said, he hugged me. And he said, absolutely. And he honored the Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. And I just want to show you how this Imam became very well known all the way into Yemen from Al-Iraq in such a young age. And he said, he basically, he kept reading with me the ahadith, and we kept, I tell him about the hadith I heard in Iraq and the hadith he has in Yemen and all this kind. We kind of debate and exchange information, no debate, exchange and asking him. قال حتى ذهب نور المصباح, the oil of the candle that he had ran out. Then he said to the baqqal, a guy across the house, get us some more oil. The night is long. And he was surprised how Abdul Razzaq rahimahullah would give such a long period of time for such a man who was a stranger. يقول, we stayed until Isha, almost until Isha. And he did not pray Maghrib yet, Abdul Razzaq. And I told him, what about Maghrib? Maghrib prayer. He said, let's finish this first. قال وكان عبد الرزاق يؤخر المغرب جدا. عبد الرزاق, he used to pray Maghrib at the end of its time. At the end of its time. It could also be because Abdul Razzaq rahimahullah. Anyway, he offered him rahimahullah money. He didn't take it from him. And he said, if this man live long, Imam Ahmad, he will be among the greatest scholars in Islam. And he was correct. He was correct. Just to give you a story also to show you how much he's respected by his peers. And that's something that we can comment on it. He said, I stayed with a scholar, his name is Ishaq ibn Rahawi. Ishaq ibn Rahawi has a title. His title is Amirul Mu'mineen fil Hadith. It's like Al-Bukhari's title, Amirul Mu'mineen in Hadith. So Ishaq Rahawi and his wife was living upstairs, and Imam Ahmad staying downstairs. All rented the same house. Okay? So him and his wife upstairs, and Imam Ahmad downstairs by himself. Okay? So he said, so they were basically with Abdul Razzaq. So they were going for Eid. It was Eid day. Okay? So he said, we're going for Eid. And Imam Ahmad was not saying anything. Abdul Razzaq was not saying anything. And Ishaq was not saying anything, just walking. So later on, Abdul Razzaq said to them, by the way, my Shaykh Ma'mar, when he used to go to Eid, he used to make takbir, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And that's the sunnah. So I'm wondering, يعني, what did you hear about that? Then Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, Ishaq ibn Rawi said, and also I know the sunnah is to make takbir. But I didn't make takbir because I didn't see you making takbir. And Abdul Razak said, I didn't make takbir because I didn't see you. So I thought maybe you have some knowledge I don't have. So out of respect, I didn't do anything. So both looked at Imam Ahmad rahimahullah and said, we did not make takbir because you didn't. So Imam Ahmad said, oh, I was just distracted. قالت كانت عندي أوراق وكتب. I was distracted by the books and the papers that I have. That's why I didn't make takbir. Otherwise, it is sunnah. So, but here, the story has a lot of things to be unfold. One, how much respect they have. And listen, Abdul Razak is like a sheikh to Ahmad. But how much have respect for him? I want to say something, and I hope young people in the audience don't get mad at me. We're living in a time these days, especially with all these new generations, okay, that they demand respect, but they don't want to earn respect. A lot of young people today, they demand respect, but they never put real effort to earn respect. Everybody deserves a certain level of respect regardless. But I'm talking about this kind of respect. If you want to be treated this way, to be really consulted, you have also to put the effort in learning and growing and, you know, in order for you to be treated this way. Or, oh, you think you're just going to gain it because you're young, because you're a female, because you're a male, because you're from this. No, you're going to get that because of your effort, because of what you have, what you earn. Anyway, so that's one thing. Also, you can see that sometimes taqleed can be a problem. You just think because somebody did something and you follow him. That's why العلماء رحمه الله يقولون عمل المفتي ليس بحجة. In usul al-fiqh we have a rule that the actions of the mufti is not a hujjah, is not a proof, because he might did something for a reason. Maybe he was sick, maybe he was distracted, maybe he forgot. So his action is not a proof that this is really his position or his opinion. Okay? Anyway, so Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he said that he spent most of his time learning, and there is a lot of story happened to him in Yemen, but finally he got hired by a caravan to take care of the camels and stuff like that, and to travel them back to his home, to Mecca, and then after that to Iraq. He heard from so many scholars. And one thing about Imam Ahmad, when you look at the name of his scholars, you'll find people who are older than him, people who are in his age, and people who are younger than him. So he narrated a hadith from people actually younger than him, in the same age and the older. And that's why العلماء كانوا يقولون لا يفقه الرجل كل الفقه حتى يروي عمن هو أكبر منه ومن أقرانه ومن هو من دونه. You will not be a true faqih and a true scholar until you learn from people older than you, in the same age and younger than you. There's nothing shame about learning from people younger than you and listening to them. Hushaym, for example, Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he traveled to him in Mecca, and he has a story there when he went to him, rahimahullah. Also, people like in his level, like Ibn Ma'in and Ibn al-Madini, and great scholar narrate hadith from him, like his students, like among his students who? Al-Bukhari. Al-Bukhari narrate from Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, his sheikh, Muslim, Abu Dawood, these great books of hadith, that Imam Ahmad is a sheikh for them. And Imam al-Shafi'i narrated hadith from Imam Ahmad, but he never mentioned Ahmad by name. Like if you look at books of Shafi'i rahimahullah, he narrated hadith and he said, قال حدثني الثقة. قال حدثني الثقة. He always say, the trustworthy told me. And every time a Shafi'i says, the trustworthy scholar or man told me, he referred to Imam Ahmad. And Imam Shafi'i used to tell him, you tell me about any hadith that I hear, I want you to tell me about it. You know the hadith better than me. So Imam Shafi'i is a sheikh to Imam Ahmad. But yet he admits that Imam Ahmad rahimahullah in ilm al-hadith has more advance in him, and he basically recognized that and respect that. Anyway, he came back to Iraq about when he was about 40 years old, so about 10 years traveling. And he came back to Iraq, and now the time to get settled and to what? Get married. So he married, rahimahullah, a woman, her name Abbasah bint al-Fadl. And he got a child from her named Salih, his older children. And he lived with her 20 years. He used to say, I lived with this woman 20 years. She never gave me a hard time. She never disagreed with me. And she never gave him a hard time on anything. And she said, she's a very supportive woman to me, rahimahullah ta'ala. Then after that, he married another woman. Her name is Rayhana. And she had a child, he had a child with her, Abdullah, his other son, Abdullah. And she was one-eyed woman. There is some narration said that he was giving the choice between her and her sister. And he chose her over her sister, even there. Her sister was much more attractive than her, but he chose her, rahimahullah ta'ala. She lived with him a few years, then she died also. Then after that, he had a surriya named Husn, and he had children from her. كان أوصى أن يؤتى له بسرية قال أريدها عليها لحم يعني رحمه الله. Anyway, he had this woman and she got him Al-Hasan wal-Hussein were twins. So Imam Ahmad had a twin actually, and also he had Muhammad wa Sa'id wa Zainab. Muhammad Al-Hasan wa Muhammad, they became all the way to age of 40. But the one who really became very famous is Salih. Salih became actually a judge in Asbahan, and he died in it. And he had two children, Zuhair, and he's a great muhaddith, rahimahullah, and Ahmad. Anyway, because he became a judge, his father became so angry at him. Because Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, he was against that he will take any position with government. He liked to be independent, and he was worried that if his son worked for the government, this kind of leverage over him. And he actually cut off his son. He did not talk to his son for a while. And he became very, very sad. حتى كان يقول عن أولاده قال يريدون أن يأكلوا بي أو بنا. He said, my children use my name to find jobs and to get money. He's using my name, I'm using my position, so they can get some appointees in the government. I did this for Allah. I didn't do it for any worldly reward. He was very upset about that. And his son Salih told him, Father, I would like to tell you I will not do it, and I will not look for a job from the government, or will not take gift from the rulers, but I will be lying, and I don't want to deceive you. I actually accept the money from the governor and from the government. It's the Abbasi Khilafah. Okay? It's not Bashar al-Assad. Okay? It's the Abbasi Khilafah. The Khalifa. And he said, I don't want to take anything from them. And he said, Father, I am in debt. I have so much debt. I can't pay it off. Paying debt is more to me important then taking from. But Ahmad rahimahullah, that's his personal choice. Doesn't mean that it's a model for us. But if there is anything that for us to learn, is to have dignity, especially if you are a person of knowledge, and not to have a leverage over you, to be to basically willing to live independently. Recently, one of the community in America that I'm very familiar with, in Maryland, they used to get a grant about $2 million a year for their school from the government. Last year, the district told them, if you don't change your curriculum and you accommodate some of these liberal, extreme liberal ideas and all this kind of, nonsense things that they're introducing to children these days, if you don't do that, you're not going to take the grant. They did not say, oh, we will accommodate. No, they said, we're not. We don't do stuff like that. We're Muslim, this is haram. They cut out the grant. But believe me, not everybody can do that. That's why the money, it is basically can break your spirit. You remember the story of Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. When he was stretching his feet in the masjid when the minister passed by. He was so angry, he wanted to put him in jail. He said, no, if you put him in jail, you will cause a problem. And I have a better idea for you. He said, what? Give him money. So he sent money to Abu Hanifa. Hanifa looked at the money and he laughed. He said, go back to whoever sent you and tell him, إِنَّ الَّذِي يَمُدُّ رِجْلَيْهِ لَا يَمُدُّ يَدَيْهِ. He said, the one who stretches his feet does not stretch his hand. You're not going to buy me. So anyway, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah would live a very, very, very tough life. To the extent, one time, just to see how strict he was about this issue. But Imam Ahmad's strictness, and that's a lesson to learn. He was very strict about himself. He does not give that opinion to others, enforce it on others. And that's very big difference. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, his son brought him dajaja mashwiya, like a chicken that it is grilled. Then he told it was grilled, this chicken was grilled in your son's home. Used the wood that was given as a gift from the government. He said, I'm not eating it. You eat it. I'm not going to eat it. But again, he didn't tell his family it's haram for you to eat, but I don't want it. And that's something important. Sometimes you as an individual, you as an imam, you as a leader, you might take some strict position or whatever opinion for yourself. It doesn't mean that everybody has to take that position. You don't need to enforce it, on people, unless you believe it's haram for anyone. Anyway, not only that, even his son Abdullah, he cut him off in the end because of the same reason. He became basically appointed by the government or like accept their gifts and stuff. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, when he came back to Baghdad, can you imagine how famous he is before? So then a trial happened to him, but he became so famous and he became well known. There is a Khalifa at that time, his name Al-Ma'mun. Al-Ma'mun was the only one I know as an Abbasi Khalifa, became an extreme Shia, Tarafa. And he mixed between the extreme Shi'ism and extreme Tajahum, another group of people who deny Allah's names and attributes and things of that nature. As a matter of fact, Al-Ma'mun, as Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah said, he's the first one ordered the khatibs to curse Abu Bakr and Umar openly in khutbah al-Jumu'ah. هو أول من سن لعن الصديق والفاروق في خطب الجمعة. And he actually ordered in certain masajid أن يحفر في محاريبها, that they will engrave in the mihrab of the masajid the curse of Abu Bakr and Umar by al-Ma'mun. And he was an extremely aggressive leader, very aggressive. And he come up with this idea that he was influenced by a man, a judge, his name Ahmad ibn Abi Du'ad, his chief judge. He convinced him that Al-Quran is not Allah's speech. Allah doesn't talk. Al-Quran is one of Allah's creation. Like He created this phone, He created you, He created something called Quran, that's it. He created a book, created these words in a tablets somewhere in the heavens, and Jibreel used to read from it and deliver it to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Allah never spoke. Allah doesn't speak at all. He doesn't speak to anyone. So, and he said that should be the correct belief. Anyone claim that Allah speaks, he claimed that Allah like humans, so he's kafir. Which is a very stupid idea, because of very what I mean, because Allah speak, you became like you exist and Allah exists. It means Allah like you. Allah has knowledge and you have knowledge. It means you are equal knowledge, or it means Allah is like you. No. Allah is alive and you are alive. It means you're alive like His life. No, we understand the difference clearly, and so on about Allah's speech. But anyway, he was convinced with that, and he said, anyone oppose me will go to jail, will be tortured. Then they said, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, this chief judge of him, Ibn Abi Du'ad, told him he knows the only real obstacle will be Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He said, tell Ahmad ibn Hanbal, force him to say it. So the scholar at that time, some of them don't want to in trouble. So what they will do, they start making tawriya. Yani one of the scholars, he was asked, and he held the mushaf, and he said, this is one of Allah's creation, no doubt. And he was pointing to his hand. So the Khalifa thought it's just passed. And sometimes they know, but for them in public, they got the approval. Or some people said, At-Tawrat wal-Injil wal-Quran, these three are Allah's creation. And he means the three fingers. So this is some of the statement that was used. So to get out of it. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, they brought him. Or they told him to come. So Imam Ahmad said, Allahumma la taj'alni ara al-ma'mun. Ya Allah, don't ever let me gather with al-ma'mun in one place. Because he knows al-ma'mun will kill him. Guess what? 3 days later, al-ma'mun died. People thought, that's it. As actually it became worse. Al-Ma'mun's son, which is a very famous Khalifa that we all know, his name al-Mu'tasim, became very excited about the idea because of the chief judge. And he thought this is his father's legacy. It's the worst legacy. And he started torturing the scholars. And he brought in Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, and he put him in jail, and he tortured him so much beyond your imagination. I'll tell you, the one who used to torture Imam Ahmad said, Wallahi, I have a whip. If I would have hit the elephant's back, I would have broken it. قال كسرت ظهر الفيل. Not just anything, the elephant. I would have broken its back. This man used to hit Imam Ahmad, and al-Mu'tasim sitting in the chair on the throne, watching, or going down to the dungeon, whatever, watching the torture. And he would say to the guy, قال اشتد يديك قطع الله يديك اشتد عليه. Hit him harder. Hit him harder. By the way, this is the same Mu'tasim The same Mu'tasim who fought in Ammuriyah. You remember the story when a woman, Muslim woman, gets slapped by one of the Romans and she said, Wa Mu'tasimah. Then the Roman soldier said, yeah, Al-Mu'tasim all the way in Baghdad, he never cared for you. You're my slave. She said, no, I will never be a slave. Then when Mu'tasim heard, he made an army and he went and he conquered the city and he freed that Muslim woman from jail. That's the same one. What's ironic here for us to learn, people can have a very different sides of their life, dark and bright. That's why Imam Ahmad, Imam Ahmad, he was put in jail, he was tortured, and he was heard in jail, in the cell, saying, Allahumma ansur al-Mu'tasim fi Ammuriyah. Ya Allah, give victory to al-Mu'tasim in his war against the Romans. Where is this fiqh from those people who have no fiqh at all? They don't understand how to balance their positions. We have to understand there is a difference between also, there is an areas and cases that has to do with the whole ummah. Where the ummah at large, it doesn't matter if somebody with bid'ah or no bid'ah, but that's something that basically will affect the whole ummah. If those Romans comes and walk into your village, they're not going to say, oh, you are Sunni, you are bid'ah, you are Madri Aish, you are from Sunnah al-Jama'ah, you are Hanbal, you are Shafi. They're going to wipe everyone out. Imam Ahmad, understand that. And I'll give you something else. He said that I forgive al-Mu'tasim in the night. So somebody in jail from the students, he said, you know, and also later on, they said, how can you forgive him after all what he did to you? Listen carefully to what he said. قال إني لأرجو أن ألقى إني لا أريد أن ألقى رسول الله غدا وبيني وبين أحد قرابته شيئا. لا إله إلا الله. He said, I don't want in the day of judgment that the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam will see that I had something against one from Ahlul Bayt. And Al-Mu'tasim is a descendant from Ahlul Bayt al-Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He said, I forgive him because of his relationship to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I don't want Rasulullah in the day of judgment see me that holding one of his family member accountable. Then another time, he was says, okay, what about those people who torture you? Why you forgive him? Listen to the next thing he said. قال ولم لا وما يفعل الله بعذاب وماذا أستفيد وماذا أفعل بأن يعذب الله مسلما بسببي. He said, what would I will benefit if Allah punished somebody in the day of judgment because of me? And what this benefit will bring to me? Okay, you know what? He abused me. I'm holding against him. Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi. And the day of judgment comes, and Allah punish him and take him to hellfire for what he did to me. How this will help me? And how this will benefit me? Imam Ahmad said, what I will benefit from this? Zero. Do you know when you're going to benefit? When you forgive. Allah forgive you, and Allah reward you, and Allah elevate you. So, Allahu Akbar. Anyway, so Al-Mu'tasim tried and tried and tried, and so many times has debate happened in front of him. And he said to him, why don't you answer the chief judge? Then Imam Ahmad used to say one thing. Give me proof from the Quran and Sunnah and I will answer. Just give me one proof from the Quran and Sunnah for what you say. Give me a verse in the Quran or the hadith of Prophet ﷺ saying that the Quran is not Allah's speech. Al-Quran and Sunnah says that this is Allah's speech. Give me any proof for this aqidah that you claim to. That's simple as that. And that chief judge couldn't develop or produce any evidence. Or logic, مدري إيش. Ali Ahmad said, just give me proof. Give me proof. Do you know that the chief judge, you know what he used to say to Imam Ahmad, to Al-Mu'tasim, to the Khalifa? قال اقطع رقبته. Kill him. وأنا كفيل دمه عند الله لك يوم القيامة. Just kill that man, and in the day of judgment, I'm responsible for his blood. But Al-Mu'tasim was scared. There's a lesson to know here. First, ilm and knowledge is not based on titles. Not because he's the chief judge of, of the Muslim state, it means he's knowledgeable. Some people have big titles. That day, I was in a gathering and they talked to me, there is Maulana Shamsul Zaman, ومدري إيش, the Mufti of the North Atmosphere for Jinn and Ins and humans and Jinn, Shaykh مدري إيش, Qamar al-Zaman مدري إيش. Long title, like 2 lines. Do you think I'm going to really buy that? I am Shaykh al-Islam, I'm Ayatullah, I am this. That doesn't make you Ayatullah. It doesn't make you Shaykh al-Islam. PhD, it is maybe not. Maybe, but it doesn't mean granted. Number one. Number two, Ahmad ibn Abi Dawud could be someone as fiqh, but his belief is corrupt. His aqidah is corrupt. Also, one of the common difference between ulama Ahl Sunnah and the scholars of Ahlul Bid'ah, the scholars of innovators, that ulama Ahl Sunnah never ever use government power to prosecute and to kill and to put in jail those who they disagree with through history. While the opposite is correct. Or at least not common, but to the other side it's common. Where always the government used to prosecute Ahl Sunnah and put them in jail. And the stories, there's so many in many areas. And it's sad. If you want, there is even somebody wrote a book recently from modern days called Mihan al-Ulama, the trials of the scholars. And you will see this reoccurring theme. So, another lesson also, that our aqidah should be based on Quran and Sunnah. Our aqidah is simple. Our belief should be based on Quran and Sunnah. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah understood that this is not about Allah's speech only. He used to say, those people in the end, they will end up, their statement, their philosophy, coming all the way down to what? That there is no God. Because if I tell you, Allah, He doesn't talk, He doesn't hear, He doesn't see, He doesn't, likes, He doesn't this, He doesn't that. At the end of the day, He's not. If I tell you, by the way, where I came from in Texas, I have in my house a tree. This tree is a very unique tree. It does not have roots, nor it has any leaves, or trunk, or color, or space, or taste. There is a tree? That's a denial. And that's exactly what they're saying about Allah. He's not, he's not, he's not, he's not. So it's just an idea. There is an idea in my head called tree. So that's what's Allah for them. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah understood what is really is about that. And I'm saying this because in modern days, we might not have the issue of a Quran as Allah's speech or not, but you might have some people come up with ideas and things that it is wrong, but there is even a bigger problem down on the road. Like so many of these, I hate terms that are ambiguous. So I'm going to use the term, but I will explain. These liberal ideologies, because I don't think liberal is a bad word. Liberating is a good thing. Liberating thinking is a good thing. To be an open-minded thinker, I think it's a good thing. But in the way it's used in many ways, it meant those people who do not hold themselves according to the Sharia. So some of these agenda that you see, is not just about issues related to women, related to youth. Actually, there is a bigger agenda behind that, which is, it's not about just, there is some violations for rights of women, rights for minority. No, you can see that there is a whole entire agenda of, this whole religion is rejected. We don't adhere to any higher power. It's called God. You have to see what's behind the agenda. That's a very clear Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. You can see from his defense of Aqidat Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and how he understood the bigger goal that these guys are trying to push. And we should learn from this today as well. Anyway, Al-Mu'tasim find out that he became so sick, Imam Ahmad, after all this torture. So rahimahullah said, let him go home. So he sent him home, and he became sick for several days. Then after that, he was able to go back to teach in the masjid. But later on, Al-Mu'tasim died, and his son became Al-Wathiq in charge. And Al-Wathiq, he also started testing people. Ahmad ibn Riyad, again, the chief judge came and convinced him to put pressure on Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. So he said to Imam Ahmad, if you want to live, don't be in the same city where I live. I don't want to see your face, I don't want to hear your name. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah started hiding and going afar and traveling. And he started like this for about a year, roaming in the Muslim world, going to Mecca, like in Arabia and in our peninsula, just for a whole year running around. Nobody knows where he is. And one time he was somebody's house hiding, and he stayed 3 days, then he left. Then they asked him, he said, because the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stayed 3 days in the cave, then he left. So, anyway, after a year, he came back to his house, and the government made a house arrest. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah stayed 3 years in his house. He's not allowed to pray in the masjid, Jumu'ah, or any salah, the daily prayer, and Jumu'ah, he doesn't allowed to pray in the masjid. He's next to the masjid, but he's not allowed to go. He's just in house arrest. Until he died, and later on, the Al-Mutawakkil, his name is Ja'far, became the Khalifa, and he didn't like the idea. And subhanAllah, it started with a young man like the young man in front of me. He was brought into the Khalifa, and in front of the chief judge. Then he said to the chief judge, he said, I have a question. He said, what? He said, this whole idea of Khalq al-Quran, Allah's speech is a creation. Is this something the Prophet ﷺ knows about it, or he didn't know about it? What do you think the answer will be? You must say what? He knows all. If he said the Prophet didn't know about it, he claimed that he has more knowledge about the religion and Allah more than the Prophet. So he said he knows about it. Then he said, do Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali know about it? Or they don't? He said they knew about it. He said, did the Prophet ﷺ made it a condition for Islam? Or Abu Bakr or Umar or Uthman or Ali? Did they tested people? They forced people to believe in it? Or they never really tested people? قال هل امتحنوا الناس بها? Or they just didn't? If he said yes, give me the proof. He said no, they didn't. They knew about it, but they didn't ask anyone about it. He said, subhanAllah, something the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali remained silent about it, never asked people to talk about it, never examined people. And you, ya Khalifa, al-Mutawakkil, couldn't be like him and let it go and not to talk to about it and not to torture people over it. أَلَا يَسِعُكَ مَا وَسِعَهُ? Then he said to the chief judge, from now on, nobody will be tested. you know, like a litmus test. We used to have that in America. I don't know about you guys in Australia, but in America we used to have some litmus test, like to know if you're Catholic, you're abandoned. If you're Jews, you're abandoned. You're not allowed to have a government official titles in certain states. If you're a Catholic or Jew. So litmus test, that was something known. They asked them questions because these consider people who are not believer. Anyway, for the Protestants. So anyway, so it's called litmus test. So it has a history in the United States. Going back to the point, so later on, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, do you think everything finished? No. There is one guy, his name is Ibn al-Thalji, Jahmiyun Khalis, one of Ahl al-Bid'ah. He told the Khalifa, by the way, Imam Ahmad, have one of the rebels in his house hiding. So they went and they searched the house. They even went inside the well. There's a water well. They went inside to look for him. Nothing. Then he knew after that it was just somebody saying something bad. So the Khalifa felt bad and he brought him to the palace. And he didn't eat for so many days. Not a single thing. Not a sip of water. They told him, if you keep Ahmad in the palace, he will die because he will never eat from your food. So they let him go. Anyway, Ahmad rahimahullah, one thing I want to say before I end. Imam rahimahullah is not just amazing in his knowledge. What's amazing about Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, إنه كان آية في الأدب. His manners, he's so well mannered. Beyond your imagination. Beyond your imagination. So respectful of others. مرة ذكر عنده إبراهيم بن طهمان. Ibrahim ibn Tahman was mentioned his name. Imam Khan was like this, sitting like this. So his son mentioned Ibrahim Tahman. He sat properly. They said to him, why did you change your position? قال يا بني ما ينبغي أن يذكر الصالحون ونحن متكئون. You don't talk about the great men like this while you are sitting this way. Show respect. Ibn Kurayb, or Abu Kurayb, this is a scholar. He used to teach. He saw some of his students coming from his class. He said, he's a good man, study with him. Then the student said, excuse me, Shaykh, but he doesn't say nice things about you. قالوا يتكلم عليك بسوء. It's not very nice about you. قال ومن حيلتي رجل صالح ابتلاه الله بي اكتب حديثه فهو ثقة. He's a good man, but I'm his fitna. And he doesn't like me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him with me. He's a trustworthy person. Write this hadith. That's a great deal of being so honest, so truthful, nothing personal. Rahimahullah. Ayah fi tawadu. And unbelievable when it comes to, how humble he is. And also easygoing. He laugh with people, he sit with them, deal with people rahimahullah ta'ala. So patient, he never get angry quickly. Very quiet person too. And also, Imam Shafi'i said, Shafi'i when he says something, he means what he said. قال ما رأيت أعقل من أحمد. Never seen anyone wiser than Ahmad. So it's not knowledge only. And that's something I want to say in the end. It's so important when you grow all together. And I mean by that, it's not right, your information grow, but your akhlaq don't grow. And your wisdom don't grow. And your understanding of the religion grow, but your understanding of culture doesn't grow. Understanding of people don't grow. You have to grow together. So you become a balanced person. The more you do that, the better you are. Not right, you know Quran very well, but you're so ignorant in hadith. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah was one of his strengths is his ability to have that balance. Anyway, a man like Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, we can stay the whole night talking about him rahimahullah, and I just literally mentioned from my notes that I prepared for this talk, 1/4 of it. So, Ahmad has a 280 Shaykh teachers. That's something to learn from. The variety of people that you learn with, as long as they are good, trusted, it opens your heart. One of the things that I'm so proud of in my life, that I had teachers from different backgrounds. I have teachers who are Turkish. I have teachers who are Egyptians. I have teachers who are, from Pakistan. I had teachers who are from Saudi Arabia. I had teachers from Syria. I had teachers from Egypt, teachers from Yemen. And that have contributed a lot of my life to so much wisdom, so much understanding. In the beginning, alhamdulillah, I make sure that my teachers I come from a pure source, but as I grow older, I had teachers who have, some tendencies in maybe in Sufism or Ash'arism and stuff like that. But after I have a good foundations in my understanding of Aqidah, and I have respect for everybody, I learn, I grow. And that's so important for people to go. But that's only you go to that area when you build a foundation, so you don't get confused from the early stage. Ahmad rahimahullah has an amazing family support, from wife to children. His books and his ilm preserved and spread by his children, rahimahullah ta'ala, even though like in the end he became like very upset. He hated being famous. He didn't like that. But I don't blame him. Like if you read some of the story that I have, you wouldn't blame him for how he became like that. People treated him in a very weird way. Like what somebody would say, نظر عليهم أحمد تعدل عبادة سنة. Just 1 second, look at Ahmad, it's like worshipping Allah a year or 2 years. الذهبي قال هذا من الغلو فيه. People became extreme. That's why he hated this. And he abandoned people. He basically didn't. One person came to him and said, جزاك الله عن الإسلام خيرا. May Allah reward you for what you have done to Islam. He said, son, what are you saying? You should say, بل جزا الله الإسلام عني خيرا. May Allah, جزاك الله خير Islam for what Islam did to me. I didn't do anything to Islam. Islam did to me. So he didn't like that fame and became idealized. Today there is people looking forward for that. Try that. And so on. Anyway, I just want to make sure that you understand also this notion that Ahmad ibn Hanbal is very strict and actually Ahmad ibn Hanbal's madhab is one of the most lenient madhab. He only strict in Aqidah, that's it. But other than that, in fiqh actually it's one of the most lenient madhabs. Who do you think the closest school in madhab closest to Imam Ahmad's madhab? Do you think Ahmad's fatawa, the Shafi'i or the Maliki or the Hanafi? Actually, a lot of time Abu Hanifa and Ahmad comes together, and many more than even some researchers said more than Malik and I don't know personally about that, but definitely he learned a lot from that. But he had a different manhaj, definitely than the Madrasah Ahl al-Ra'i. But anyway, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, people said he's not a faqih. He is faqih rahimahullah. He's a great faqih. Make dua for him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gather us with the Ahl al-Ilm. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much. Hope to see you tomorrow inshallah.
Jazakallah khair very much for the Shaykh, inshallah.